Good morning again. Thank you, Charlie. Beautiful prayer. You know, I want to share with you something before I start the talk. When we've spoken so much around here, there's only one, and I need you to all know now there's only one air conditioner, okay? It's that one. So if you're hot over here, move over here. We have worked it out, so we're thriving on that. And somebody said, well, will it be fixed in a week? No, not until October. But we've got it to kind of be okay. Don't you feel comfortable? Because that's about it. This is about it. So we appreciate the wisdom to keep this one running. And the funds, we've got all our funds to complete our project. So we as a community did very well. Very well. So we move forward with that. And thank you, Doug and Jim Nelson, for being on that committee, many others. I had to join them last Friday with a walkthrough, and Mary said she's on vacation. She gave me strict instructions. Write down every question. And so I'm like, boring. And so I'm like out there in the heat, and they're saying, you're using air conditioner terms. And so I'm going, okay, the thingy up the side, and feeling just really proud of myself. And I got home and none of my notes make sense, so I'm relying on Doug to pull that together and make Mary happy. So pressure's on you, Doug, off me, because I don't know what anything meant, but I was there. So that's just a slight update I wanted to share with you. And this talk today is, let us not fool ourselves as we continue to explore the message of the healing consciousness that dwells within each and every one of us, absolutely. And this very topic is one that I squirmed with in ministerial training and in my studies and my testing, because I didn't want to ever have this question come across and have to try to answer it. But what about? What about the people that are born with diabetes, these children that are born with some kind of a birth defect? What about them? What did they think wrong in their life that they were born this way? And there's no answers to that. There's no answer, but there's a deep understanding. So there's a difference. There's an understanding. So what I speak today is almost like a Zen koan. I speak a truth, a faith, a confidence that I lean into this teaching for my answers, for my support, to lead me in and out of the world's suffering, to give me strength to carry on. But at the same time, I'm left always with the question, why? So this idea, and I appreciate Damien's reading so clearly, because it's the core of the teaching. When we realize that we are a body, we are a mind, but deeper, we are a spirit, we are a soul. And so this soul of who we are is always, always perfect, always. So there's where we lean our faith in, into knowing that this soul is never touched by the human condition. It is what our mind and our thoughts have interpreted. Whatever it is in our experience is what we see and what we feel. So feeling has a lot to do with our journey. So the one practicing, here's another quote from Ernest Holmes, the one practicing must be able to look a fact in the face and know that all manifestations are effects. Everything we see is an effect and can be changed by changing the mental cause. He must be able to look at the sick man who has come for him for help and know that only perfection stands before him. But it takes deep spiritual work. It takes deep spiritual work to not deny that somebody is coming to you with cancer or with a new diagnosis that has frightened them. We don't just say, oh no, it's nothing. Don't even go there. No, we spend our time, especially with the trained practitioner mind and the ministerial mind and your minds as you deepen your study and your journey, to know absolutely there is a perfection and a truth. And everything else is a journey. Everything else is a journey for you to deepen your heart, deepen your understanding of compassion and empathy, to be part of humanity, to be part of the change that you want to see happen in our world. So it starts to expand into this huge opportunity for each and every one of us. So he must see only perfection stands. This is where our faith is. I know in you, absolutely, that there is divine grace flowing through you and that you are whole and perfect just as you are. But he must see beyond the appearances, beyond appearance, and see perfection. This will not be irrational to the one who has made a careful study of the power, the science of the mind and spirit. So strong words, strong teaching, and one of the most challenging probably to really embrace wholeheartedly, especially when you're the one in the middle of a drama. So some of the things I'm going to talk about spiritual bypassing a lot more at the 10:30, but I'm going to touch upon it here because it's a valuable concept that was a Buddhist concept, came out of one of the books about Buddhism, spiritual materialism, back in the 80s, 70s, sometime back in then, and they realized we can spiritually bypass all that's going on, hide behind an affirmation, run to our books and say, I don't want to know that's happening. I don't want to know that's happening, so I'm going to find an affirmation. And we put a spiritual Band-Aid over something that is festering. Now, this is really obvious in today's news, that we have allowed racism to be part of our cultures for years and years and years. We've had different sufferings for years and years and years. And oftentimes, we haven't been personally affected, perhaps. We've been aware, we've been touched, our heart's been broken. But have we gone deep enough? Have we gone into it so deeply and allowed our prayers to remember that there is a perfection there as well? I don't know. But this calling of our world right now is certainly not letting us get away with spiritual bypassing any longer. So I share with you today from the book. This book, I'm just taking my time, I'm savoring it. It's called The Book of Joy. And this is the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, written by Douglas Abrams. And it's rich. These two men, we have the Episcopalian Christian, and we have, of course, the Dalai Lama of the Buddhist leader. Two of the wisest men, and two men that have endured such years of suffering. It keeps me awake when I realize how many years he's been in refuge, right? How long has he been taken out of his country? How threatened he was at age 16, the Dalai Lama. He's in his late 80s now, I think, right? Something like that. 16. This idea was bestowed upon him. You are the next Dalai Lama. Your country, you need to get political now. 16, 18. At 24, he was in exile. Age 24. And then all these years, the threat of taking away the Tibetan culture. You remember, and some of you are old enough to remember, Free Tibet. All the flags, all the bumper stickers, all the rallies. And I was a part of that, but I didn't understand it because I didn't look deep enough to what was really the threat of a culture, of a way. And I thought, here's where it's the invitation to not go into spiritual bypassing is to stay long enough with the suffering, long enough to walk in the shoes and to feel a sense of your compassionate heart blossom and awaken. There In that compassionate heart lies the Spirit of truth. There you can speak your prayer. There you can see the right be made from what has been wrong. And so deep practice is what's called for. And I'm going to share a little bit of their testimony as they were dialoguing back and forth. And the chapter is suffering and adversity. So that I felt that kind of blended with this idea I'm trying to share with you. And I'm in a class right now with Cher Matthews, and we're talking about vital energy, and it also includes a way of changing your eating called Bright Lines. But one of the things that we were talking about is this very idea that we are a body, a mind, and a soul, and that we want our energy to flow evenly through all of those layers. And we can accumulate toxins from our environment, from our body, from emotions, and from our mind. We can accumulate these things, and if we don't address them, we stay in a state of imbalance. We stay in a state of suffering at one level or another. And so the truth, though, here is that the soul is truly beyond all of those imbalances. It's beyond all disease. So in that knowing of that depth of perfection, I truly, my heart's desire, my prayers throughout last night this is a challenging message to share with you, because it's serious at our time in evolution here on the planet. But to know that there lies my faith. There lies my faith. There starts my prayer. If we can begin there, things will begin to shift. We will be that thought, that the whole evolutionary idea on this planet, some of the sufferings, and you pick whichever area you want to focus on. And this week, interesting enough, with this topic, I've had people come to me suffering from the misunderstandings because of social media of their friends. And a lot of it had to do with spiritual bypassing. The insult they felt when it was put back in their face, oh, you're just spiritually bypassing this. Me? I care, I feel. We all are touched by moments of just wanting to bury our head, to bury our heart, not to endure some of the suffering. So Ernest Holmes saying, a person in our field would be deceiving himself if he refused to recognize that something could be wrong with the body and the mind, even though nothing could be wrong with the spirit. Nothing is wrong with Mother Earth and the spirit deep within. Nothing. But what we have done in our ways, in our unskillful ways of being, have been an accumulation of some of the sufferings that we see. And now we have something very important, especially as spiritual mind practitioners, each and every one of you that come into this training, to use your skill, to use your mind, to use your power to make what's wrong right. And so he said that Ernest Holmes reminds us again, this would be saying peace when there is no peace. We must avoid such an assertion. One of the chief offices of spiritual mind healing is to relieve the mind of fear, to compose the thought and permit it to reflect the deep inner feeling that comes from conscious union with the spirit. Science and religions could walk hand in hand if this was the accomplished purpose. So do you see where we're going here? We so much don't want to experience or show any hint of anger. It's not spiritual. I've had more people say to me, can't believe that just came out of your mouth. And where do I go there? I go into, ooh, can't believe I said it in my loud voice either. But sometimes swear words come across out my mouth. And sometimes I'm sorry, sometimes I'm not. Because sometimes that dang swear word is the only one that has the vibration of the depth of the yuck that I feel. And so it comes out, I clear it out of the way, it is a burst of anger or frustration, and then, without shaming myself, I say, what is here for me to see? How can I use this taste of anger, this taste of disgust, not to victimize and blame and point? It's out there. Where is it in me? And where can I polish this away from the shining soul of my being so that truth permeates this and I do not bypass it? I do not bypass this that is making me so angry and frustrated. I do not curse the political climate, but I sit long enough to say, that is not my way, but what is my way? And how can I speak my prayer of heart into the universal consciousness and to pray and pray ceaselessly to a greater good unfolding? So it's an invitation. You pick whether it's, the kittens, if you could do something for the kittens at that level, for animal suffering, for animal rights, for the children, for the refugees. One of the things that I did when I was on my tour was visited the Red Cross Museum in Geneva. And I thought, I'm a nurse. I used to wear a little red cross. This is going to be interesting. It was painful. It was painful. The whole experience invited you to stand with these holograms of people, of refugees that were speaking back to you and telling you their story, and you stood and their eyes followed you. You couldn't get away from them. They became real, and their story became even more penetrating. But each one of them, through that adversity, found grace, found their truth, found their power, found their way in the world to make a difference. One man that lost his legs stated that he pitied himself, and he was a cast out from society because he had no legs. Somebody took interest in him and invited him in to some training, and through that training he became an advocate for all the people that lost their legs from those bombs that are laying anywhere. He was innocently injured, and that became his life's work. He began making a difference. Yay! Yay that I got to hear that story and that his eyes followed me in that. And it was mesmerizing. So you go to each and every one and they tell their story. And then you go downstairs and there's a whole display of photographs of all the refugees with their bundles, clear back from years and years before to some of the Holocaust times, to the current day Syrian refugees, to the current day. And I picked up each one of those photos and looked in the stories and felt it, really let myself feel it. Now, it sounds like this is all a narcissistic talk about me, but it's about humanity and our involvement with humanity. So what's getting in the way? What's getting in the way of all of this? And so we ask ourselves sometimes, the relief for doubt in our mind, for uncertainty, is really pointing to a sense of, do I have a lack of faith here? Then we turn to our spiritual training. We spend our work, our meditations, our prayers into statements that will make a change in the world. We must go deep, it says in one of the writings, we must go deep with calm determination, as Ernest Holmes says, to reorganize the whole body of our thinking until all the triggers of disappointment, regret, fear, irritations, radical differences of beliefs and disagreements with everything and everyone are redeemed. Oh, that seems like so much work. Yeah, it is. It's called spiritual practice. It's calling you. It's what called you here today. It's the stirring of your soul to say, I want to find a way. I want to redeem what's going on out in the world that I live in. We want to redeem our absolute conscious awareness as something greater than we are. And there's where we lean into this grace of absolute love. Because through all of those stories that I came across in the Red Cross Museum, all of it, through every story that I've read about the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl's work especially, love prevailed. And a sense of doing something. Viktor Frankl never gave up, and we can never give up. We can never give up on love, but to allow ourselves to say, I stand in the power of love that is greater than all that I see out here. I stand in that, and I speak my prayer from that reservoir of the absolute. So sometimes in that doing, we are criticized, and sometimes our thoughts become unskillful in those moments. We can shrink back and say, oh, they didn't like me because I said that. I'm feeling that right now. You might not like me. And I'm like, huh. Thank you, I have a fan. But that love, that whisper is a divine channel through you that feeds my soul. That there is a greater love. There's a greater love that is what this message needs to come across. We can't assume that we can read everyone's mind and what they're thinking. So these ideas to help us with any kind of spiritual bypassing, we can't assume to read everyone's mind and then make up our reaction. We need to leave room, possibility for thinking of something new, of a new possibility, that maybe they aren't thinking that. You know, that gets us in trouble. That could trigger Charlie and I into an argument real quick. Has that been for you? Well, you always. Trigger word. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. You can go back and forth, and then you realize, but what about when? And we need to remember the what about whens. And to recognize that we need to be careful of trapping ourselves and asking honestly, am I just assuming to know? Am I just assuming to know what's going on clearly in the world? I sometimes watch myself spout out something like, well, what they are doing, and I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm not in the room of the debates. It's what I feel, and I have to pay attention to what I feel. I have to pay attention to what beats in my heart. So it goes on in the ideas of being okay with criticism or praise, to not think in just black and white terms, to watch your mind generalize in experiences, it's probably going to happen anyway, and start to worry, but to recognize that we have an opportunity to set a new idea in motion, and to abide in that thought with our whole heart, with our whole being. So we don't want to get trapped in the shoulds of a spiritual life, of being always looking so poised and peaceful, but to allow the anger or the frustration that we feel to go deep into our soul, deep enough so that we can respond to the world and start to make wiser decisions. And so I'm getting the sign that I'm running out of time sharing with you, but I wanted to speak these words, especially from this book, because it's so valuable. There's a Tibetan saying that even in a tragic situation can become an opportunity. So please personalize this. Stay global, but stay personal at the same time. There's where the work is. Every situation can become an opportunity. The painful experiences shine the light on the nature of happiness. They do this by bringing joyful experiences into sharp relief. This is the book of joy. How do we do this in the middle of our suffering? To embrace suffering, then, is an opportunity. And he said 7 points of training. There are 3 categories of people that are most challenging. I bet you can guess what they are. Family members, your teachers, and your enemies. There's 3 objects, 3 poisons: attachment, anger, and delusion. They poke at the heart of our suffering. And there's 3 roots of virtue: non-attachment, compassion, and wisdom through spiritual training. The question is, how do we help people who really want to be joyful, who really want the world to be a better place? Yours is to be calm in the midst of suffering. Long for the best of the other as you would for yourself. Desmond Tutu gave that statement in answering that question. because that was the question of this chapter. How? How do we do it? How do we stay calm? How does the Dalai Lama do it? And it's really charming to see the times where he lost it. I don't know why that's my shadow side going, Dalai Lama lost it there. How'd he get it back? And it's a page turner. That's kind of reading I do. But this scripture, he brings that, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It brings that to life, and that's how Desmond Tutu answered that question. But the Dalai Lama was sharing his story and wrestling with the wiping out of his entire culture, and how they ended up as refugees in India, and how the Christians came forth, did not try to persuade them outside their understanding, which I appreciated this, but helped them to find safe ground so they could continue to nurture their culture. But they found that they had a lot of deep work to do, and it was over many, many years. And he said the path to joy is like with sadness. It does not lead away from suffering. And in particular, I want to share this, and I know my time is out here, but I understand what the Dalai Lama was saying, but how do we really embrace the suffering and see it as an opportunity while we're in the middle of it? And Dalai Lama says many Tibetans spent years in Chinese work camps where they were tortured and forced to do hard labor. This, some of them told me, was a good time to test the real person, their inner strength. Some lost hope, some kept going. Education had very little to do with who survived. In the end, and this is my message to you, it was their inner spirit. It was their warm-heartedness that made the real difference. He shares at age 24, when he escaped to India, I had lost my own country in a way that made me very sad, particularly when I think of the serious questions of whether the Tibetan nation, with its unique cultural heritage, will ever survive. This civilization had existed for 10,000 years. And today's situation is the most serious crisis in the entire history of the nation. And he goes on to express this idea of how long this suffering has been. And think about your own personal suffering. Sometimes when we're in it, it's like, oh my God, it's been a whole week. And when I think about, my God, a lifetime, and they stayed true to their teaching. So the Dalai Lama says, with a lot of difficulty, a lot of problems, when you carry out the work and the more difficulties you encounter, then when you see some results, there's great joy. When you see the light, when you see the crack of light burst through your heart. And he said, you see, if there's no difficulties and you're always relaxed, you complain even more. That's the Dalai Lama was laughing at the irony that we could experience more joy in the face of great adversity than when life is seemingly easy and uneventful. And finally, it was humbling listening to the holiness, and the Archbishop said, because I frequently mention to people the fact of his serenity, his calm, and his joyfulness. We would probably have said in spite of the adversity, but it seems like he's saying because of the adversity that this has evolved for him. And he was holding the Dalai Lama's hand, patting his hand passionately and affectionately. So much to share, so little time to share. As you can see, I marked many pages in here. One of the key points in the suffering that the Dalai Lama shared that I leave you with. One of the Chinese guards, through much torture and much horrendous conditions, his words to the Dalai Lama were, he told me he was in danger of losing his compassion for the Chinese guards. That humbles me to the ground. To think that I could be using some of my spiritual seeking, and to recognize that Please, whatever I see, whatever I learn, may the door of my heart stay open. Stay open to the world's suffering, to the individual suffering. May I not become spiritually bypassed in such a way that I toss it away and just tell them to pray harder. No. Let's go into a prayer that we remember who we are here. It is a privilege to speak. It is an honor and a challenge both to speak. But I share with you the authenticity of my heart. And I know for each and every one of us here that there is only one. There is one love. There is one truth. And this is a love and a truth for all. And the absolute knowing of this love and this truth is through empathy and compassion. To allow our hearts, to allow our bodies, to allow our minds, to invest in one another in such a way that we stay as one. And we see there is no one way or one right way, but a way for all, a world that can work for all. As we stand in this truth, as we become willing disciples of this truth, that today and every day hereafter, I truly stand in the truth that it is done unto me as I believe, and it is done unto me as I love the other. And I allow the other to partnership with me in every prayer, in every understanding, so that we can let go and let God do what God does, and that is love, love for all. So I release this prayer knowing that we've only scratched the surface, but that each one here has a wise understanding of the truth. And I release this prayer into your hearts. May it be done unto you. Thank you, God, for this truth, for this revelation, for the evolution of humanity as we stand in love. And so it is. Thank you.